today's news, the cast will talk about mineral resources and terrestrial ecosystems. Our stellar reporters will cover topics throughout the globe.
And these global topics include a story on rare earth minerals and who's behind it, deep sea mining and the technology used to mine the ocean floor, and life in radioactive lands. Now over to Mitchell and Sawyer, who have the story on rare earth minerals.
You got to go and dig those holes.
Man, I'm tired.
Mitchell and Sawyer here to talk about rare earth metals.
With the ever-increasing demand for the latest and greatest technology, also brings new challenges to compose and manufacture these devices faster and smaller than ever before. The so-called miracle in the industry, rare earth metals. The most common application for these metals is small but very powerful magnets. They are created with elements such as terbium and lutetium, two very valuable metals. Both metals happen to be heavy rare earth metals, more desirable than the 7 light rare earth metals that precede them on the chart. These 7 desirable heavy earth metals are sought out for their complex electron configuration, making them stronger and last longer than the 7 preceding them. However, enough about the scientific procedure. For an example, the iPhone you are texting on as we speak contains europium and neodymium for the display, and the previous 2 metals I talked about earlier for magnets in the speakers. With these iPhones just containing a few milligrams of this metal, so brings about the task of gathering all these metals. 75 million iPhone 6s were sold last October to present day, creating a huge demand for just one aspect of this giant industry. So for those who are unaware of the market for rare earth metals usually come from China, China being the leading exporter of these metals. China has a monopoly on the market and crushed the United States' only rare earth metals mine in the Mojave Desert in Southern California. The mine recently filed for bankruptcy, and Molycorp, the owners, were run out of the market. Due to the flooding of the market by China, prices dropped to an all-time low. While prices dropped to an all-time low, Molycorp was unable to function in these conditions. During my research, I discovered a few key aspects to why Molycorp mine failed. First, the U.S. imposes strict environmental regulations due to polluting in these zones. Second, the means to refine these raw materials are often labor-intensive and take a lot of water and the use of harmful acids. Finally, the metals in the United States are found deeper than in China, making the process more time and costly. As for international implications, Soros will discuss those next.
Thanks for the information, Mitchell. The lack of rare earth metal mines in the United States has gotten to the attention of the Department of Defense and Department of Energy. Rare earth metals are important for high-end electronics and energy-efficient products such as CFL bulbs. The U.S. military uses about 8% of all rare earth metals in the United States. Most modern military equipment requires some sort of metal that comes from the heavy rare earths. This is especially prudent in high-tech munitions and planes. Currently, China has a commanding control over the rare earth market, making U.S. military equipment production susceptible to the will of the Chinese government. Already, components for high-tech weapons are made in China. According to National Center for Policy Analysis, the Department of Defense recommends national stockpiles of rare earths that are important for military equipment. Already, components for high-tech weapons are made in China. According to the National Center for Policy Analysis, the Department of Defense recommend national stockpiles of rare earths that are important to have for military equipment, but in contradiction to itself also stated current supply is substantial enough for current production. Many people are very concerned about the impact China's monopoly on rare earth metals has on the United States' national security, but currently nothing other than finding new sources outside of the U.S. is being done to avert potential problems. While the United States is looking to have problems with China over rare earth metals in the future, some nations have already ran into problems. Japan and China have had territorial disputes over islands for decades, but escalated in 2010 when China cut off the import of rare earth metals to Japan as part of the island disputes. Japan has a large high-tech industry like the United States and is dependent on China for rare earth imports. This goes to show how China may become a threat not only to our national security, but our economy. If China is willing to strangle Japan, they obviously would be willing to go farther with different nations. While the Department of Defense is concerned with the problem of China controlling almost all rare earths, the Department of Energy is also concerned. Most energy-efficient designs for appliances and CFL light bulbs require rare earth metals. General Electric has already complained about high cost of importing rare earths to keep up with their manufacturing. The Department of Energy is concerned because in order to keep the energy needs and thus the emissions of the United States low, they need to be able to keep up technologies that require rare earths. If U.S. companies do not get their needs met, the Department of Energy is concerned this will raise the energy needs of the country. This is negative in several different ways. It puts stress on the energy infrastructure, such as the grid. It also increased reliance on foreign oil sources, as hybrid electric cars require substantial amounts of rare earths. Additionally, increase in energy needs increases greenhouse gas emissions from power plants.
For that educating insight. Now on to an interesting new trend in mineral collection.
The new mineral resource exploitation method we will be talking about today is deep sea mining. This mining is done offshore on the ocean floor. To start off, we'd like to tell you about some of the minerals you can find under the sea.
There are three types of minerals found under the sea: polymetallic nodules, polymetallic sulfides, and ferromanganese crusts. Polymetallic nodules, also called manganese nodules, are rock concentrations on the sea bottom formed by layers of iron and manganese hydroxides on crystallized manganese minerals. The nodules vary in size and can be microscopically small, but are more commonly the size of a potato. The minerals found within the formations include nickel, copper, cobalt, iron, and manganese. These minerals are obtained through an extraction process. The nodules also vary in abundance, covering up to 70% of the seabed in some areas. These areas are mainly in the Pacific Ocean, having formed over 2 to 3 millions of years. Other places include North and Central Pacific and the center of the Indian Ocean. Another mineral type is polymetallic sulfides. They are created by chimney-like formations of rock on sulfide mounds that eject hydrothermal fluids heated by magma. The fluids mix with existing metal sulfide on the ocean floor, creating massive mineral deposits. The deposits contain lead, zinc, copper, gold, and silver. The East and West Pacific Ocean and Atlantic Ocean are the main areas to find these nodules. The last deep-sea mining material type is ferromanganese crusts. The crusts grow on hard rock substrates of volcanic origin and occur largely in the North Pacific Ocean. The minerals contain, like the name suggests, iron and manganese, but also include nickel, platinum, cobalt, and some rare earth metals. In addition to the extraction of minerals, the crusts can be used as archives of past climate change events. The uses of these minerals include electronics, batteries, and medical equipment. And now I'll hand it over to Kathy to tell us about the technology involved in deep sea mining.
Well, that is interesting, Paige. Thank you for that exciting intel. Seeing as all these minerals are at the bottom of the ocean, the most common question is, well, how is this done? It's a simple process. Featured here, we have a video showing off the contraptions used to collect the minerals. As you can see, the technology is pretty elementary, and this process is so new that there are multiple ways of collecting the material. The most common that we've seen thus far can be easily compared to a water vacuum of sorts. At the bottom of the ocean, you have your self-propelled collector. The collector moves forward with the technology that allows it to dismantle minerals from the ocean floor and pull it into a flexible tube, connected to a rigid pipe with hydraulic pumps that lead the minerals onto the platforms, where it is dispersed among barges that carry it to shore. Some technologies are more like robotic arms that collect the ore from the ocean. This is not as fast as the self-propelled collectors on the ocean floor. Who on earth could be doing this? Over to Paige for the answers.
Thanks, Cassie. Currently, the International Seabed Authority, or ISA for short, regulates deep sea mining. The ISA is an autonomous international organization established under the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. They control handing out permits for exploration of potential mining sites and, in the future, permits for exploitation of the minerals. Since 2001, the ISA has issued 30 permits, 18 of those being over the last 4 years, showing a rising trend in deep-sea mining interest. July of this year, the ISA met to discuss how exploitation of the sea floor will be regulated. Currently, several nations and companies around the world have shown interest in deep sea mining, including India, the UK, China, South Korea, Japan, Russia, Germany, and France. In response to this, the Deep Sea Mining Campaign formed in late 2011. This is an association of NGOs and citizens from the Pacific Islands, Australia, and Canada that are concerned about the impact of marine and coastal ecosystems and communities in the potential mining areas. Advocates of deep sea mining believe that seabed mining may be less dangerous to the environment and people than traditional land-based mining. However, this is a new endeavor and could have unforeseen negative impacts. Environmental assessments are currently being run by the ISA, but with such little information available at this time, it can prove concerning what deep sea mining could implicate in the future.
Thanks, Cassie and Paige. Now onto a segment about terrestrial systems. We are talking about a rather interesting topic tonight, the human impact of terrestrial systems. We will discuss how humans have affected different ecosystems around the world. Our first topic tonight is the Darien Gap, located between Panama and Colombia. This is the home to a forest and swampland that consists of enormous biodiversity. This area measures almost 50 miles long. While the Darien Gap provides a home to over 700 terrestrial ecosystems, including 550 species of vertebrates and guerrilla warfare, the land is also what is keeping North and South America disconnected. The Pan-American Highway is unable to continue through the Darien Gap because of environmental costs. The area has not been industrialized, and that is what is keeping the terrestrial ecosystem flourishing. In a recent National Geographic article, Dr. Ricardo Carrara, a conservation programs advisor at the Panama Wildlife Conservation, explained that because the road has not been completed, the biodiversity of the region has been protected.
Thanks, Lexi. There has been an 18-mile radius of abandoned terrain surrounding the nuclear power plant in Chernobyl since it exploded in 1986. The land was deemed too radioactive for humans to live there, allowing nature to take over. Some argue that this untouched land has become an Eden for wildlife. However, reduced biodiversity has become apparent in the area, and many plants and animals have shown significant deformities and more problems with reproduction. This video gives us an inside glimpse of Chernobyl from the perspective of a scientist. Unfortunately, 30 years is not enough time to rid us of the dangers of Chernobyl. Places as far away as Germany are still facing repercussions of the event. 700 miles from Chernobyl, the German government is still paying hundreds of thousands of euros every year to compensate hunters who catch wild boars too radioactive to sell. Also, just this April, a fire in the Red Forest threatened to cover the surrounding area in a second wave of radioactivity, but was avoided thanks to the efforts of the emergency response team. Mammals are the most sensitive to radiation, making the Red Forest especially vulnerable to its effects. While the explosion in Chernobyl alerted the world to the potentially dangerous future of nuclear power, it also instigated the revision and improvement of such power plants for safety. Once again, technology will shape the uncertain future ahead. This is Olivia Snap signing off on the Nightly News.
Another terrestrial ecosystem segment we are speaking about tonight speaks about radioactivity and hits close to home in the United States in Denver, Colorado. After World War II, the United States started to create nuclear weapons. In 1952, the Rocky Flats plant was built in Denver, Colorado. This plant was one of many built to create nuclear weapons. When enclosing this area of land for the power plant, along with the land, they enclosed populations of deer, coyotes, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and even plants. After the plant was ultimately shut down during the late 1980s due to several violations of EPA regulations and withheld information to the government, in the early 1980s up to until 2010, the EPA started to create plans to clean the area of contamination. In recent years, the area is now a refuge for terrestrial ecosystems that live and surround the area, which is called the Rocky Mountain Arsenal Wildlife Refuge. There are more than 330 species living in the Rocky Mountain Arsenal Wildlife Refuge today, and despite the possible contamination from the nuclear power plant, that still lingers, but wildlife is doing wonderfully. For more information on the Rocky Mountain Arsenal Wildlife Refuge, you can visit the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service website.